is to provide 50 free nights of music every summer for the last 47 summers. Unfortunately, this is the first one where we are not doing that, but we still look for other ways to bring free entertainment open to everybody, the entire community, with a huge gamut of different types of music every year.
Thank you, Andy. Isabella.
Hi, everybody. First, I just want to say thank you to the Queens Chamber of Commerce for having us all here. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. I work at the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is an environmental nonprofit that's been around for 50 years exactly. This is our 50th year anniversary. We have staff of about 750 plus people, 6 offices in the US and 1 in China. So we're a very large nonprofit, and we work primarily in environmental advocacy, litigating and advocating for protecting the people on this planet and the planet itself and our natural resources.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to have you all and to really have you share your expertise in the area of nonprofits and how we're all surviving through COVID. We're certainly in some uncertain times, but we'd love to share with our viewers, our subscribers, and how your organizations are managing during these times. So I'd like to really start by jumping into the panel question. And the first question that I have, and I'd like to direct it to Michael, is how has the past several months reshaped the way Goodwill Industries their business strategy?
Thank you. I'm going to focus on Good Temps, which is the nonprofit staffing firm associated with Goodwill Industries. Just like everybody, I'm sure we're using technology more than you ever have or may ever wanted to. And now that is our forefront and the most effective way for us to communicate in the times that we're in. Good Temps is a staffing firm. So if you vision what a staffing firm looks like, the process of people coming in, meeting with an intake department, acquiring all the documents to allow those people to then go out and find work in their field or in their expertise, takes a lot of back planning and preparation to be able to allow them to go into the field of work. All of that is now done online and in a very seamless process of being able to Zoom or Skype for interviews, to gathering the documents through email and processing them, and then allowing them to go out into the field to work. One of the biggest business strategies that had to change, or was our main focus, was really how to keep our essential staff and our essential workers safe in their travel and on the job. And if those jobs have changed, what the expectations would be and how we would assist the agencies with meeting those goals. So, as a staffing firm, we send people into other people's environment, but we're also responsible for their health and well-being and making sure that they have everything they need to be in that environment. So a lot of our human resource policies has changed. A lot of our direction and the communication had changed into understanding the feedback and the limitations of them in that role and what they would need to be then to have a successful placement.
Okay. So as industries, thank you, Michael. So I have a second question for you. So as the industries are entering the next phase, what does the new norm look like for your organization?
Yeah, I think I touched on it. I mean, the new norm is technology. It's used as much as we can, but, one of the biggest things about nonprofits is our essential workers and the direct line staff and people that are really in the forefront. So, it's easier from a management perspective or meetings and communication, knowing when someone's schedule is open and being able to schedule a Zoom to educate. But it still trickles down to the people that are doing the direct care and the frontline work, and making sure that our business is supporting those people more than ever. If wasn't our main focus, it needs to be and will continue to be, because as time goes on, things are going to change. The strategies are going to adjust. So, I think one of the biggest things is being able to look at a time period, reflect on that time period, understand what happened, what needs to change, and then implement it for the future. And, really be a work in progress to allow people to feel safe and productive in that environment.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Andy, what new approach has your organization ventured into to provide either the same or enhanced level of service?
Sure. I mean, as far as the same or really enhanced level of service goes, I mean, it just doesn't exist for us, unfortunately. And our mission is to put on live concerts at our venue, which holds about 2,000 people. We operate 6 nights a week during the summer, usually. So we can't operate this summer. We had talked about perhaps doing some things in a safe, socially distanced manner originally, but even that was really difficult. And I think a lot of, we are a part now of the National Association of Independent Venues, which has recently reached out to us for some money from Congress. But, we've talked to other similar types of venues. We actually, the Friends of the Levitt Pavilion were the original Levitt Pavilion, but they're actually maybe 6 or more Levitt Pavilions that have since sprung up that the Levitt family has seeded. Pretty much everybody wants to be a follower at this point. Nobody wants to be a leader when it comes to putting on live music right now. So we had thought about ways to still put on entertainment this summer and decided instead to pivot to putting on as safe and as incredible of a 2021 season as we can. We're still trying to be in our community's lives right now, to the extent that any of the artists that have been on our stage are putting on live performances, streams, drive-in shows. We're trying to use our social media network to give a voice to those artists, still support them, still give folks in our community something to do with their days. But it's absolutely changed because we just can't safely put on concerts right now.
I'd like to add into what Andy is talking about, kind of in a related note. NRDC, as I mentioned, is celebrating their 50th anniversary, which was supposed to be a huge opportunity to host a lot of 50th anniversary events, obviously in-person events that would be really big fundraising opportunities. And we've absolutely had to pivot because we can't host any of those events that we were planning to have. So I think it's important to acknowledge, if something's not going to work, especially at this time, there are some things that you have to let go of and just say, let's hold on this and do it when it is safe and when we can do the best possible version of that. Because I think, recognizing where you have that opportunity and just to wait for it and that it's worth it to wait is a smart move in some cases, because there are some things that just kind of can't go virtual.
Absolutely. And further to that, and it picks up on what Michael is saying, the use of technology, we had looked into possibly doing a virtual concert. There are a couple of pretty famous artists that live in the area here in Connecticut who have performed on our stage before, and we had looked into that. And even within the 3 or 4 months that we've been living this way, so much has changed month to month, where you did have a lot of performers who were putting on sort of pay-per-view concerts from home. But as the weather's gotten better, as the lockdowns lifted, people aren't as interested or have the attention span to sit on their couches and watch live concerts. So we're kind of in the same boat, right? Like, what's the best way to put this on? If we are going to expend any of the pretty precious resources that we do have, given that we don't have some of the same sponsorship money flowing in, what's the most effective way to do that? And it's really just constantly changing.
Thank you. So would you say, and I'll start with you, Isabella, and anyone can jump in, would you say is there a one-size-fit-all virtual fundraising platform for all?
No. I think it's very important to think of, how much money are you trying to raise in a particular event? Who are you trying to reach? Who will be the donors in every event? And also, where are the strengths of your organization? Do you have a really robust communications department so you can reach out, have a really far reach and kind of launch a campaign for a virtual fundraiser? Or Is your organization a little bit smaller? So it might be worth it to rely on your board members to reach out to their network, you know, in a more interpersonal way. So I think it's really important to kind of approach every fundraising event differently and really think about who do you have, what are your resources as a nonprofit? Who can you partner with? You know, are you great with corporate sponsorships? Maybe that's something that you really have locked down, and then you should use that. So yeah, I think it's very important to be specific about your fundraising events. And then also, you can take a different approach for a different event. It doesn't need to always be the same. You can do something really, cast a really wide net and expect that you're probably going to have, you know, middle to small donations, or you can do something that's a lot of a tighter knit community with some of your major donors and know that, you know, you're only going to have 20 people on this event, but you're hoping that they're all going to make big donations. Okay.
There is one question that came in the chat, and I think any one of you could pick it up, but this may be right in line with Andy. One of the questions is, has anyone come across any grants that support transitioning to online arts programming?
I'm not aware of anything specific to that, but I know that, you know, just to Isabella's point, right, when it comes to fundraising, we've been looking at grants and spending a lot of time trying to figure out other ways. Just, it's really tough right now, obviously, to go to corporate sponsors, even individuals. I mean, we had on March, I want to say it was March 9th, it was a Tuesday, when the market got clobbered. I think it lost, you know, the Dow lost 1,000 points. We had an individual in town who was going to cut a gigantic check to us to pay for David Crosby. And we were pretty psyched about that. You know, all that's gone, right? I mean, nobody's giving us anything close to that. So grants are definitely something we're focusing on. As far as online specific, I haven't seen that, but, you know, it's a great idea and definitely something to look into, because I think, like most of these types of organizations, nobody ever really needed to rely on just technology, just virtual interaction to survive.
Great. Thank you. And I know you touched on this, Isabella, but if you had to, like, points on the recipe for virtual fundraising, it just high-level items, what should an organization really think about and consider when they're going forth to virtual fundraising?
Sure. So I think it's still, some of the rules still apply for an in-person event. You know, you want to have a fundraising goal. And then that will kind of dictate who you're going to be inviting to this event, where the platform will take place. So definitely have those initial parameters in mind. I think a really, really critical aspect of online fundraising is finding a way to make it interactive. People still want to feel like they're interacting and have some sort of semblance of, it's not going to feel like it's in person, but the best you can do to kind of imitate that experience is helpful. So I think it's good to look into platforms that can be more interactive, or if it's a really small, you know, donor event, maybe that's something where you do like a Zoom call instead of a webinar platform where folks don't get to actually see who's in the meeting. That's a very specific, smaller kind of event. But find a way to make sure that you're being interactive, remind people of where the Q&A section is, make sure that they feel heard, and then make use of pop-ups and different calls to action throughout an event, so that people feel like you are constantly communicating with them. There's multiple opportunities to donate within the event. I think that's really helpful. And there are a lot of webinar platforms right now that have that capability. So you can have, you know, 3 calls to action within a 1-hour call and 2 opportunities to donate $5 to $10 with just a click of a button. I think that's definitely helpful.
Okay. How important is it actually, it is very important, so I know it's important, but how has, and I'd like each of you to touch on this, how has your organization remained relevant during this time? Because it's so easy to lose that edge, especially in such uncertain times when you don't have that face time. How have you remained relevant? And we can start with anyone, Andy.
Sure. So, from our end, unfortunately, probably the biggest reminder that we were still around and in people's lives was when we canceled our season, which we announced, I want to say mid to late May. And that was kind of right around when Connecticut started to lift its restrictions. The numbers are starting to come down a little bit. So I think there were some people that were hopeful that we'd have a season. For our organization, I think it makes the most sense. Like I said, the people that we serve the community, we're open, our gates are open to everybody. We have a couple of ticketed fundraising events every year, but otherwise, our 50 free shows are always free. But the people that financially that we typically support are artists. They're hurting too. So anything that we can do to, like I said, raise awareness to what they're trying to do, whether it's through drive-in concerts, live concerts that they're streaming, we're trying to do that. But really, our organization, I think we decided it makes the most sense to kind of pull back a little because we just can't really serve our mission right now. So I think the biggest impact we can make is by lending our support to others right now.
Michael?
Yeah, I just want to add, our agency has really relied on our connections and community-based organizations as well. I think that it's really important at this time to, like Isabella said, use your resources and connect with your directors, your board of direction, to understand the realm that you want to be in and who's in there to assist with, everybody has needs right now. Everybody has the same limitations to say, or, in fundraising or hiring or, different things that everybody is struggling with. So I think that more collaboration and the more ability that we have been showing the willingness to work with different organizations as a partnership, I think has really allowed us to stay relevant. Maybe we didn't get that job, but we can team up with somebody that did and supply the staffing to maybe a cleaning company that has all the cleaning material, right? So maybe a little bit different than what we typically do, but the partnerships have kept us relevant.
I definitely echo, the points that have been made. And then also I think this is a really tumultuous time period, not only because of COVID, but, with the current racial justice movement that's happening, there's a lot that's happening in the world. And I think it's really important for all nonprofits to acknowledge that, even if it's not necessarily directly in your lane. So for NRDC, we are an environmental organization, but we're releasing statements as they relate to racial justice and this current, movement. And I think it's super important to acknowledge what's going on in terms of that world, as well as, the difficulties of COVID-19 and what's happening in our society. I think to not be acknowledging that makes it seem like, the nonprofit is maybe not paying attention to everything that's going on. So I think that's a really critical way to stay relevant, is to, respond to current events. And then because we are in this virtual world, people are on their phones so much more. So getting your message out via things like Instagram, Facebook, being active on social is not something that's necessarily new, in the past 10 years or so, but there's so much more of an opportunity there than there was before, because everybody is on their phone way more. Screen time is up. So you can get people's attention, I think, a lot easier than you might have been able to before.
Okay. What would the panel say that the most important tools are for survival in 2020, for the balance of 2020?
I think that, you know, top-down leadership with the direction of a lot of people's input is extremely important. You know, one thing Goodwill has done from the beginning is had very strong leadership in the direction of what they're going to do for the stores, what they're going to do for each and every program. And, you know, I think that it allows for a lot of the uncertainty or the questions and concerns and feelings to be minimized, or at least, you know, heard and respected in a direction. And I think that survival is key on a lot of change from what we've learned right now, understanding the input from everybody involved. If that's parents from home with kids, or if it's, you know, people working way more than they ever had because they're now connected way more, you know, finding balance, listening to different levels of management and different levels of workers is just extremely important to survival, because everybody's doing something a little bit different than what the norm was. So,
okay. How would you say that? And we talked about basically everyone's really on the phones more, they're Zooming more. How do you find that the engagement of the organizations that you service and your partners that help you do what you do, how engaged are they, and how does the impact of what's happening to their organization due to the, you know, what's happening socially and due to COVID, how has that impacted, you know, your organizations, that you're able to continue to do what you do? Is the engagement still there? Isabel?
I think there's definitely engagement that's still there. I am sure that people are feeling kind of oversaturated with everything being so online. And, you know, this is a really tough time for businesses, nonprofits, and kind of, I'm sure there's a lot of, for everybody, they, you know, a person interacts with so many different entities in their life. And now probably, you know, 50 to 75% of these entities are struggling. So they're reaching out via email saying, hey, we could really use your support with this. And so I'm sure that people are feeling sort of overwhelmed with all of the outreach, and therefore it might be, you know, kind of creating a bit of a tension in terms of like, where do I even engage? Because there are so many different organizations that I could engage with. So I think it's important to seem approachable and be selective about how you are engaging, and, you know, sort of to my points earlier, just like know who your audience is and curate whatever your outreach is in a way that is approachable and attractive to them. So if you're trying to reach, you know, more of a millennial, younger age group, focus that energy in your Instagram space. And then if you're looking at kind of like your older group of donors, or more senior group of donors, focus that on focus that on email.
Yeah.
And have your, you know, major gift officers make calls to them. So, yeah.
Okay. So I'm glad you talked about millennials a bit. And this question, as being expert millennials, all of you on nonprofits in the next generation, what would you say is the important role that millennials serve to take organizations into 2021? And we can start with anyone. Andy?
Sure. Sorry, can you just repeat
Yes.
the end of the question there? Cut out a little on mine.
What important role will millennials serve to take organizations into 2021?
Sure, it's a great question. Just within my organization, we have a board of, I hope nobody from the Levitt's listening, and I'm not offending anybody who's on the cusp of this, but I'm pretty sure I'm the only board member that's under 60. And it was important for the board to bring in somebody from a younger generation. And for me, it was a really exciting time because they recognized I'm a lawyer and I have a skill set that I can bring to help them navigate some issues with the town that they've had, some issues with certain individuals, because we're a music venue in the middle of a residential area, and we always deal with folks who are a little bitter about the sound. But I think recognizing that there was not only within our board, it was important that we had a sort of a generational shift, but within our community that one was occurring, and how do we best position ourselves. And one thing that we've really been focusing on is, what does putting on live music look like? And you can apply this to any organization, right? But we looked at our what we do, said how can we sort of bring this into the 2020s in a way that will best position ourselves. And what I've been helping focus on is creating more experiences as part of our programming. So we do every week we do one kid show. Melissa and Doug, which is a toy company. Melissa and Doug, the founders of the company, happen to live in Westport. They sponsor it. Every hour before the kid shows now, Melissa and Doug bring their staff. They do face painting. They have toy giveaways, things that really bring people in to engage, to not just see music, but, to have all of this fun. And then, they stay, and then, they also get to see a show, but they walk away, their kids walk away with all this stuff, right? It keeps them loving the Levitt, wanting to continue to support us. A good friend of mine, I used to work in the music industry and still have some connections outside of the Levitt. I serve as outside general counsel for a nonprofit that a band started. And I got involved with them through my law firm. And one of the lead singer of that band, he performed at the Levitt last year. And we had a pre-show VIP meet and greet at a local restaurant. It was outside. So, again, it was a really unique, fun thing. People were really buzzing about it. Everybody was posting it on social media. The local media around here picked it up, right? It's focusing on things that, the next generation really feels is special. What's a way to take it to the next level? And I think that's something that we've really been doing a great job with.
Perfect, thank you. You mentioned also, you touched on media. So my question to the panelists, how difficult is it now, or is it difficult to get that media attention that you would get normally before we entered the whole COVID era?
For us, for sure, because we just aren't putting on performances right now. But like I said, any way that we could use our social media platform and our voice to support artists or to support movements. I mean, last summer, one of the fundraising shows that we put on was Our Native Daughters, which is a band of African-American women musicians. Renan Giddens formed the band. Their first performance ever as a band was on our stage. And then they played Newport Folk Festival and the Smithsonian. We were going to put on the Black Pumas, another African-American band. Would have been a perfect opportunity, but instead, we're just going to get behind them. We can't give them a stage, but we'll do everything we can, to give them our audience.
All right. And I'd like to remind the viewers, please continue to put your questions in the chat. We're getting some great questions. I'm going to read one now that came in. And the question is from Davi. Are there any new ways that nonprofits have used to raise funds in this difficult environment? Isabella, because you've done fundraising.
Sure. So I think also in a way this sort of relates to what Andy was saying, but partnerships that maybe might not have been possible before have become possible because there's no restraint of needing to travel places to, say, host a panel with, a really interesting group of speakers that might be all over the country. That can happen. You can pull that together and it can be virtual and there's kind of no issue there. And yes, that was possible before, but it might not have been your first thought, and you would prioritize, in-person events and panels and meetings. So I think, expanding the group, your partnerships beyond what is local and more easily available is an option. And in that way, it's bringing in a new audience that maybe might not have had exposure to your organization. So I would say definitely something that NRDC is doing is looking to expand their partnerships or have Gina McCarthy, our president, on panels with folks that she, even though she hasn't met, it's a great opportunity to get together virtually and bring together supporters from all different, sectors and different advocacy sectors or interest groups. So that's been kind of a creative new thing that we have done, establishing partnerships where we might not have thought before.
Thank you. Michael, your business is a little different. Are there any different platforms that you've used?
I was just going to go back to what Andy was saying about the social media, and you asked the question, has it helped or hurt, or have we reached the same amount of traction? I think for us at Good Temps, we've increased our traction on social media. Unemployment rates are crazy, so people are finding ways to find jobs, and us being a free staffing firm is a big incentive for people to get signed up with. It's not going to cost them anything, and they have a lot of opportunity to find work and jobs that can be long-term and fairly high-paying jobs. So I think our social media traction has actually increased, and we've gotten a better result from that.
Okay. Is there any? Yes.
I can actually add to that in terms of social media. It's something that, this is more from a personal perspective, but I was not as aware of, there's within Instagram, there's an option to set up kind of like a donation portal. And I've noticed other nonprofits that I'm interested in using that, and it's a great way to get those kind of like smaller donations with people that might not be members. If you launch a good campaign, you can add this little donate sticker, and it's surprisingly effective. It also kind of encourages your followers and your supporters to do that themselves, because they can put it on their own Instagram. So it's almost like, I don't want to say you have your, supporters fundraising for you, but it kind of does serve that purpose, and it's exciting for your supporters to see how much they're able to raise among their friends. So that's a really cool tool that I wasn't aware of before COVID, and I think it's a great option, and I don't think it's reserved only for like large nonprofits.
Okay. Would any of you like to share? I'd actually like to ask all of you to share any upcoming events in early part of 2021 that we would want our viewers to know about, or at least be on the lookout for. Andy?
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
After you, Isabel, please.
So I'm trying to follow the grid.
No, Isabel, you go first. I'll follow up.
So NRDC, in line with our 50th anniversary, we're still trying to do kind of online fundraisers and webinars that are open to the public. We post them kind of on our homepage for NRDC, and so that's a good place to look. I don't have specific dates right now, but there are, events that we're constantly putting on. And then also, if you start to engage a little bit more by signing up as a member, or signing up, for various email correspondence as they relate to smaller sectors of NRDC, they will do outreach flagging upcoming events that are open, either as fundraising events or just open panels for those who are interested. And we also do a lot of Instagram live events, which are really great, but they're not fundraisers, but they get visibility.
So you're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Okay. So
yes.
So we should be able to put that in the chat so people will be able to follow you. And so everyone, please just follow and learn about the amazing things that Isabella's organization will be doing. Andy?
Sure. So right now, it's not the Friends of the Levitt Pavilion, but actually our venue is situated sort of on the banks of a river here in Westport, just to the other side of our venue. So the river, if you're standing on the stage, is to your left. To our right is a really large parking lot. The town uses it as their farmers market, but the Chamber of Commerce took it over, and it is a drive-in movie theater right now. and they actually put on the first drive-in concerts in Connecticut a couple of weeks ago. There's another performance coming up in a few weeks with Mystic Bowie, who's a reggae performer. He's performing some covers in his band called the Talking Dreads, which is Talking Heads cover band. And they donated the proceeds from the event to our organization. They'll be doing that again after these shows that are coming up August 7th and 8th. But in 2021, folks from Queens, hop a train, we're an hour north of the city, and we're gonna have a lot of great shows. People like classic rock, jam bands, reggae, hip hop. We had a lot of good stuff planned for this summer, and we'll make it happen next summer. So we'd love to see if it was there.
And they can learn about your events on your website, and you also have Twitter, Facebook, and so forth. Can you also
Twitter users, but Instagram, Facebook for sure. I think just for our organization, we obviously don't serve a fundamental purpose like Isabella and Michael's organizations do. So I think we don't want to drown our audience with our voices when there are more important ones to be heard. But Facebook, Instagram for sure.
Great, thank you. And if you could put that information in there, that would be great. Isabella has listed her information in the chat. Please, everyone, take a note of it. And Goodwill, Temps, we know that that's a little bit different industry, Michael. But the question that I have for you that I think viewers would want to know, I know that you service by providing temps to different organizations. With the changing climate, with what organizations are going through with, I guess, funding, and we all know that many businesses are impacted in a way that they can't do as much hiring or whatever they budgeted for pre-COVID. How has your organization been able to support these organizations in these uncertain times with the providing temps where the job may not be there?
Yes, and a lot of our opportunity pre-COVID is through DCAS city agencies. So a lot of those were based on the city budget, and this year it presents its own challenges, but I think it also presents a lot of opportunity in the sense that some of the money has been allocated to different resources through the city that a lot of people have the skill set to do. So if it's like assisting in the NYCHA housing, or helping out with COVID testing, or setting up some of those different cleaning product companies and different things. I think that there's a lot of opportunity that came out of COVID for temporary jobs that may not be long-term, but it will at least allow people to get back into the field, get experience on their resume, and be ready for when long-term hiring does come up. But I think that we still do have a lot of opportunities, and we've been able to take some of the people that have been previously working for us and put them in other positions that are equivalent or other skill sets that they have. And so, we've been able to utilize a lot of the same people that we have had and plan to.
Thank you, Michael. Michael actually had a great point that funding from grants or different, funding revenues have been impacted across the board. How has your organization, Isabella, been impacted by this issue?
I mean, absolutely, fundraising has become more challenging for NRDC, but I know that our development department, I'm in the institutional department, so I know that our development department, when this first started, really dove into grant research because that is an area that, at least in the short term, might not be quite as affected. And we started to do some really creative work with how can we ensure we are able to get access to kind of as many grants as possible that make sense and apply wherever we can. And, one example is with board giving. For anybody that's on this panel that is either on a board or works at a nonprofit, 100% board giving, even if it's not, it could be $1 for each of your board members. But that unlocks a ton of access to grants. So really kind of looking at what criteria you need to make in order to gain access to these grants that maybe you didn't pay attention to before, or didn't work as hard to achieve the different goals that are set out. So we've definitely dove into grants. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. A question was entered into the chat, Michael, directed for you. And thank you for that, Isabella. How many clients go from temporary to permanent status?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a significant amount of people that do have the opportunity to go to full-time status. It really depends on the government funding, in the sense of the city agencies that we staff majority of our staff at. Like, for example, the Department of Education, if they have an admin assistant need and we staff that, a lot of times they become permanent with the Department of Education. And one of the benefits of our company is after 90 days, it's free for, if they're working full-time, for that 90 days is a free conversion rate for that agency. So it's enticing for them to bring them on full-time, as opposed to like basically after a probation period. So, you know, agencies are, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's pretty high. And, you know, we do have a lot of people that do go full-time.
Thank you, that's good to know. I have a question that's just circling back to what came up when we talked about funding and grants. How critical a role do board members play in the health of the nonprofit organizations, especially during this time? So Isabella, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I actually was on the board relations team before joining the president's team. I'm now the president's executive assistant at NRDC. So I do have a pretty solid understanding of what role a board can play. And it is extremely critical, especially in times like these, for a board to be fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities. And I think that can manifest itself in a wide variety of ways. You know, there are some board members that might have really, really great giving capacity, and this is their moment to step up and really try to do what they can to give back to the organization. And then, you know, there are other board members that maybe are not the highest ranking of donor, but they have a really great network, and that's their time to shine, to reach out to folks, to start, you know, inspiring other people to donate. And then there are other board members that might be providing more help internally. You know, you might have some board members that have really great financial expertise, and this is their time to get on a working group, maybe to start to really look at the organization's finances and offer, you know, some creative financial suggestions, and maybe some folks who have a good fundraising background that are board members can offer their expertise in that way. So I think it's so important in these times for board members to really look at the skill set that they have and ask themselves, how can I give back to my organization? Because this is truly the time for a board to step up, and it's a time for a board to be meeting more frequently, to really stay in contact with one another and to be on top of it. Because in a time of crisis, that's really what a board is there for. I mean, a board's there for other times too, but a time of crisis, it's really critical to have that support.
Absolutely, thank you. Same type of question for you, Michael, but I know it's in a whole different, different line, a level. So where you deal mostly with organizations and businesses that you provide the temp services to, how important is it now to go out there and bring on additional, or level up and bring on additional businesses that you can support? Because in doing so, it will support the people that come to you for that support of getting that temp job that may result into permanent.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of maybe the newest pivots for us, is really trying to go into the typical business sector, more than just the city agencies, especially for this upcoming year with the budget looks like. So we have really turned some of our attention and focus to companies that are also hiring at large mass and need either for temporary time or long term. But going also back to the board, I think it is also a time to maybe expand the board, find people with other expertise that are still mission driven and that want to be part of the long term project or success. You know, there's a time where you're stagnant with who you have and you think that, you know, it's going in the right direction, but like Isabella said, you know, at a time of crisis, there might be better expertise out there, or, you know, somebody knows somebody that can bring more to the table at that time, financially, you know, safety precautions, whatever that that need might be. So I think, or even relations and understanding the current, you know, times that we live in. So I think that, you know, helping even younger people, like as we talk as millennials on the board, you know, it's not really heard of to have young people on the board that often. It's typically people that have been around with the organization for quite some time, and, you know, maybe there is some level of understanding that needs to happen in between those groups. So I think that's important as well.
Thank you. Andy, and I know that you've been dramatically impacted by the by the COVID and what the services that you provide. What important role does the board play in what's in the outcome for your organization at this time?
So not to minimize the efforts of we have two full-time employees. So, you know, we're obviously a very different organization than Goodwill and the NRDC. We're very nimble. We employ a lot of seasonal event employees who unfortunately we're not able to offer jobs to right now. But our board, because of that, does play a huge role in our organization. And one thing that I noticed sort of right away, as I mentioned, we have a lot of members of the board. I think we're like a 15-person board. Honestly, I don't even know how many there are because there are just a lot of people who can write a check and put their name on the board, which is great. But then we also have a lot of people that are involved just in different ways. They may not be on the executive committee. But what we did was, you know, our greater purpose is to put on concerts, but we obviously, you know, those are high priority items, but we have a bunch of low priority items that we don't get to every year. A great example is our venue. We built a brand new venue. We used to have a wooden band shell on the site where we now operate. We actually, not joking, we burnt it down 6 years ago because it was cheaper if we let the town of Westport use it as a fire department training exercise. So they burnt it down, removed it for free, which is great. And we built this brand new facility, but we have some drainage issues at the front of our lawn by the stage that we've always wanted to fix. So, you know, we have a bunch of people on the board. The board and the executive director knows sort of everybody's network as of 10 years ago when they joined, right? But we didn't have the conversation a long time. Like, what's your network look like now? Here's a list of some things that we're looking into. Does anybody have, like Michael was hitting on this earlier, does anybody have connections in this space? And one of our board members, somebody who we probably would never have thought of or knew had this connection, has a landscaping company now, which we didn't know. And he was able to help us do this work, you know, at a really nice price, something that we probably wouldn't have done in a busy season. It's a small example, but that sort of conversation, just as easy as it is, probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for COVID. And it really allowed us to just reset with everybody, figure out, you know, my network has completely changed from when I joined the board in 2018. So it's a great time to have those conversations. There's a lot of things that are happening fast right now, and it's important, especially for large organizations that provide really important services. But it's also a good time to kind of slow down and say, you know, what are some things we can really take care of that we otherwise wouldn't have thought about.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like, we're coming down to the hour, and I'd like to take this time to just ask each of you, and we could start, we always start with Isabella, because she's right in this grid that I see right here. It's so amazing. What advice, the most important advice that you would give to nonprofits at this time to survive through 2020, going into the early part of 2021, to remain relevant and escape this whole issue? Well, you're not going to be unscathed, but basically survive.
I think I mean, it's kind of related to our board conversation, but look at your board and make sure you are hitting the marks in terms of the organization that you want to be, because they provide leadership. They offer the foundation, and take a hard look at your board and see if they are meeting the needs of the organization, and if not, act on that. And I think a big element of that is making sure that you have a diverse board, because that, you know, further diversifying your board is the future. The communities that we serve are becoming more and more diverse. You need to have a wide range of expertise, a wide range of age. You know, get some millennials on the board. We offer a great perspective. And yeah, I mean, I think it's important to really kind of start with your board and see what you need to do to fit this new future model of the organization.
Thank you. Great insight. I'm going to take you up on that advice. Great insight. Michael.
Yeah, I think to follow up on what Bella is saying is that, you know, the board is only as educated as they hear from the bottom up as well, because they aren't into the day-to-day space, similar to what Andy was saying. Like, you know, we brought up this issue and we didn't know, and now it's solved, you know. So I think that they really need to hear everyone's voice. It needs to be a team approach to understand best practice. And I think moving forward, those best practices are going to change, if that's fundraising, hiring, whatever the aspect might be. So I think that it's really important to go from, as much as it is top down, up, you know, from the bottom up, especially our essential workers and nonprofits and their struggles, and, you know, daycare, health, any of those things that add to the stress that already exists for nonprofit workers and frontline workers, I think is extremely important to take into consideration, and put that all the way up to the board to see how then the trickle down can come and assist everybody on the team.
Thank you, Michael. Andy, can you tie it all together?
Mine's going to sound a little hippy dippy, and look, I appreciate that, you know, our organization's in a much different boat. We're a little smaller, and don't necessarily have, you know, we're fortunate that we're not in a position where we're supporting a lot of families, and have to worry about making payroll every 2 weeks. But what I'd say, just from what I've observed from our organization and the reaction that we've gotten from our supporters, is this is a blip. It sucks right now, and it feels like a long time, but in the scheme of our lives, this will be a blip. But the things that won't be will be the other movements that are occurring right now, and to be kind to each other, to be inclusive, really listen to voices old and young, because people are remembering how you were there for them during this, who reached out, who checked in to see how they were doing, who wanted to let them know what they were doing because they were just looking to keep the connection there. I think coming out of this, the people that were humans to each other, they're going to be a lot stronger. Everybody's going to be more or less in the same playing field, because nobody's just absolutely crushing it and looking to come strong out of the gate out of COVID. We're all going to be in the same place for the most part. And I think, you know, the folks that really took the time to think about, you know, what occurred in these last 6 months are just going to be in a great position, because at the end of the day, all these organizations, as big as they are, relying on community. I mean, that's sort of what we're a part of right now with this Zoom session. So that's my hope. We'll see.
Thank you so much. And thank you again, all of the panelists, for sharing your expertise in the areas of fundraising and strategy and actually recovery through the whole COVID, and pre, during, and post-COVID, sharing your experience. We're not actually posted yet, but we're getting there. Is there anything any of you would like to add or really share with our viewers today? Any lasting message? Okay, really would like to thank you, the Queen's Chamber of Commerce, for actually providing this platform so we could share information. And thank you to all of our viewers today. And please keep abreast to what's happening with the Queens Chamber of Commerce. Visit the website and learn about upcoming webinars and events. And basically a question just came in, and I'll ask the question. Everyone actually does thank the panelists for today, so please give yourselves a round of applause, because everyone is really thankful that you shared your information, and we're seeing comments that great job to all the panelists, and to the moderator. Thank you, and thanks for our time, and it's a job well done to all. And we have Jeff on the scene. I think we could see you, Jeff. I'm going to turn it over to you now, and it'll stay with me. And I would just like to thank everyone for joining in, and please visit the Queens Chamber of Commerce website and find out about our upcoming events. And we look forward to seeing you all again real soon. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Take care.
you.